Hey guys, this is CPM 3, Module 1, Lesson 2. And just like last lesson, if you guys need to, you guys can pause and rewind this. If there was just a certain question or an example I went too fast on, fast forward to that example that you need. But Lesson 2 in Module 1 is over problem solving. And so we start this lesson with just a general strategy for problem solving. So first thing is understand the problem, and this is a big one right here. That means if you need to read it and reread the problem, you need to do so. If it takes you 5 times to read that problem before you understand what it's saying and what it's asking, do so. But you can't solve the problem until you understand it and know what it's wanting you to do. So after that, then you need to translate that problem into an equation and then solve it. So we're going to start off pretty easy. Objective A is problem solving involving direct translations. So the first one says, twice a number added to 7 is the same as 3 subtracted from a number, find the number. So when you read that all at once, it's very overwhelming. And so that's why we put this in words, and you just kind of do it piece by piece. Chunk it up to things that you know. So it first says twice a number. So how do you represent twice a number? So that's going to be our 2x added to, pretty straightforward, that's your plus sign, 7 is the same as, that's where your equal sign goes, and then read this one carefully, 3 subtracted from the number. So a lot of times when we have these word problems, you keep it in that order. So we almost want to say that it's 3 minus x, but that is not the case. Okay, so remember what that from is kind of your starting point. So when it says from the number, that means we need x first, and we're subtracting 3 from that original number. So it's x minus 3, not 3 minus x. So now that we have our equation, now you just need to solve it. So I'm going to rewrite that down here kind of a little bit more together so it's not so spaced out. And so solve for x. So the first thing we need to do is get x on the same side of the equation. So the opposite of a positive x is a negative x. I'm going to subtract that over. So 2x minus x gives me 1x, or just x. So drop down everything else we haven't used. That plus 7 equals negative 3. Now get x by itself. The opposite of a positive 7 is a negative 7. So we got to subtract that over. And so that number is x equals negative 10. Okay, let's turn that page. Let's try one again. We're going to go through this one a little bit quicker. It says twice the sum of a number, and 4 is the same as 4 times the number decreased by 12. So again, when you read that all at once, super overwhelming. So that's why we have this in words again. You need to do this in chunk. So twice means 2. Usually when you see this word right here, of, that means parentheses, not every time, but a lot of times. So twice the sum of a number and 4, that means we have in parentheses, x plus 4 is the same as your equal sign. 4 times the number, that's your 4x, decreased by is subtraction, and then 12. So then let's solve. So I'm going to again rewrite that down here so it's not so spaced out. So first thing you need to do is distribute, since we have parentheses this time. So 2 times x is 2x. 2 times 4 is 8. Drop down your equal sign, 4x minus and 12. So we have x on one side and a number on one side, so just move something. So I always like my variable over here. So the opposite of a positive 4x is a negative 4x. So 2x minus 4x gives me a negative 2. Drop down everything else. Plus 8 equals negative 12. I'm going to rewrite this up here since I'm out of room. Okay, so we've got our variable over here on the left. That means I need my number on the right. So the opposite of a plus 8 is a minus 8. So I've got negative 2x equals a negative 20. Your last step is to divide by negative 2. So we get x equals negative over negative is a positive 10. Okay, so you might want to pause the video and see if you can do letter C by yourself. This one doesn't have this little in words translation, so you've got to chunk it up how you see fit. C says twice the difference of a number and 8 is equal to 3 times the sum of a number and 3. Find the number. So, first sentence here. Twice the sum of a number and 8. So remember, this of right here is a key word for your parentheses. So this is another one that looks like twice is outside the parentheses, and then the difference of a number and 8. So x minus 8. So then it says is equal to, so I put that equal sign, and then you have 3 times the sum of a number and 3. So again, what does that word of clue us into? That we need parentheses. So that 3 times will be outside, and then the sum of a number and 3, so x plus 3. So this time we need to distribute on both sides. So I've got 2x minus 16 equals 3x plus 9. Usually I like my variable over here, but that's going to make it just a negative x. So I'm actually going to subtract my 2x over. So I've got negative 16 equals 3 minus 2 is 1x, or just x. And then bring down your plus 9. So this time, since I have my variable over here, now I need my number over here. So I need to move this plus 9 to the other side. Opposite of a plus 9 is a negative 9. And so we're going to get negative 25 equals x. And I am perfectly fine with you keeping it that way. I personally like to write x equals negative 25 though. Okay, but either of those are perfectly fine. So now we're to objective B, and now we're going to solve problems involving relationships among unknown quantities. So example 2, a 25-inch piece of steel is cut into 3 pieces so that the second piece is twice as long as the first, and the third piece is 1 inch more than 5 times the length of the first piece. Find the length of the 3 pieces. So this one would be very overwhelming, except how nice of them. They gave us a picture over here that is exactly what they described. So we're going to use that to our advantage on this one. So they've already have, this is your first piece, your second piece, and your third piece. And so we're going to use that to solve. So it does say here that we have a 25-inch piece of steel that's cut into the 3 pieces. So that means when I add up all 3 of these pieces, that this whole thing needs to add up to 25. So this is that one where we're going to do this part plus this part plus this part is going to equal the whole thing of 25. So we have x plus 2x plus 1 plus 5x. That's this plus this plus this equals the whole thing of 25. So just solve your equation. So combine your like terms. We have an x here. What else can I combine with that x? We also have a 2x and even a 5x. So x plus 2x is 3x plus another 5 is 8x. Drop down everything else. So plus 1 equals 25. Get x by itself, so let's subtract the 1 from both sides. We get 8x equals 24. Divide both sides by 8. And we get x to be 3. Now, be careful because we're not done on this problem. What is this problem asking us to do? Well, this problem is asking us to find the length of the 3 pieces. So that means plug it in. So when you plug in x here, that just simply means this first one is 3. So this first one, what unit are we in? We're in inches. So this first one here is 3 inches. So plug this into here. That's 2 times 3. 2 times 3 is going to give me 6. So my second piece is 6 inches. And then plug that into here. So that means it's 1 plus 5 times 3, Order of operations says multiply first. So 5 times 3 is 15 plus the 1 is 16. So we get 16 inches for this third piece. These are really easy to check. You know that these 3 pieces need to add up to the total of 25. So 3 plus 6 is 9 plus 16 is 25. So you can add up those 3 pieces and make sure that it actually adds up to what the problem said it was going to be. Now, as much as you might not have liked that first one, that one was one of the easiest ones because it already had all of the picture of the hard part for us. So example 3 doesn't. Example 3 says a 10-foot board is to be cut into 2 pieces so that the length of the longer piece is 4 times the length of the shorter. So find the length of each piece. So I didn't actually say this on that first page. I'm going to go over here. On that first page, it also says in that understand, to help us understand, you can construct a drawing. And so that's exactly what we're going to do on this piece. Just how this example 2 already had a picture for us, let's make an example. So if I have a 10-foot board, let's just draw some crappy board. And this whole thing right here is 10 feet. And so I know it's cut into 2 pieces where one is shorter than the other. So I'm going to cut this board right here. And so when you read this sentence here, the length of the longer piece is 4 times the length of the shorter. Which of those pieces do you have no information about? You have no information about that shorter piece. So that shorter piece is your starting point. That's just your regular variable. So in this case, I'm going to make that an x. So if I'm representing this short piece to be x, how do I represent that the length of the longer one is 4 times the length? Well, now that's 4x. So always figure out which one you have no information about. That's going to be your x. And then you can kind of go from there. So same as last time, the short piece plus the longer piece needs to equal the whole thing of 10 feet. So we've got x plus 4x equals 10. We know the short piece plus the long piece needs to equal the whole thing. So combine like terms. X plus 4x is 5x. So 5x equals 10. Divide by 5. And we get x to equal 2. Now, are we done with this problem? What did this problem ask us to find? It asked us to find the length of each piece. So you have to plug that in. So that means your short piece here is going to equal 2. 2 what? Again, word problems, so you need some units with these. So 2 feet. And then this longer piece, that's going to be 4 times 2, since again, x is 2. So you've got 4 times 2, which is 8. So the long piece is going to be 8 feet. And again, check your work. Does 2 plus 8 give me 10? Yes, it does. So I know we solved that correctly. Example 4, a car rental company charges a daily rate of $35 plus 0.3 per mile for a certain car. Suppose that you rent that car for a day and your bill before taxes is $170. How many miles do you drive? So in this problem here, you are going to pay a one-time rate of $35 just to rent that car. But then what's going to change is that you're going to be charged 30 cents for every mile. So let's make an equation with that information. So for every mile, well, okay, so just to rent the car, we've got to pay $35 plus my 30 cents. So you can either put 0.3, that's the same as 0.30. 0.3 x equals how much do we spend total? 170. Okay, and so again, that variable needs to go with that 0.3 because it tells you you are spending that per every mile. So depending on how much that is how much that's going to go up. So solve for x. So let's subtract that 35 over. Opposite of a positive 35 is a negative 35. So we get 0.3x equals 170 minus 135 is 145? No, 135. Okay, so then we need to divide. Don't be scared of that decimal. It's still just 0.3 times x. The opposite is to divide. And so let's use our calculator on that. So 135 divided by 0.3 is going to be 450. So what did we find to be 450? It wants us to answer how many miles did you drive? And this X right here stood for miles. So word problems kind of need some word answers. That's why we put the short equals 2 feet, the long equals 8 feet here. How many miles did you drive? We need to write out we drove 450. What unit are we in? Miles. Okay, word problems need some sort of word answer. Example 5. If two walls of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. were connected, an isosceles triangle would be formed. The measure of the third angle is 97.5 degrees more than the measure of either of the two equal angles. Find the measure of the third angle. Okay, this one gets me on my geometry itch. We have an isosceles triangle. Isosceles just means you have two sides that are the same. So because those two sides are the same, these angles are also the same. So it says the measure of the third angle, I'll go ahead and underline this. The measure of the third angle is 97.5 more than the measure of either of the two equal angles. So we have no information about these equal angles, so that is your x. So I'm going to put x degrees. So then how do you represent that this third angle, this very top one here, is 97.5 degrees more than? That's going to be x. Let's make that look a little bit better. It's going to be x plus 97.5 degrees. So another thing we need to know about triangles. Triangles add up to be 180 degrees. So it means this angle plus this angle plus this angle needs to add up to 180. So that's your part plus part equals whole. So we've got one angle plus the other angle plus your third angle, and that needs to equal 180. So combine your like terms. X plus x plus x, that's going to give us 3x. Drop everything else down. Goal here is to get x by itself, so let's subtract this 97.5. So I'm going to get 3x equals okay, that took forever, but it equals 82.5. And then divide by 3. And we get x equals 27.5. Now, just like before, that is not my answer. You've got to answer the question that they asked. They want you to find the measure of the third angle. So yes, these two angles here, they are 27.5 degrees, but we don't care about those two angles. We're just wanting that third angle. So that's why we use x plus 97.5. My x was 27.5. So add those together. And so we get 125 degrees. So again, word problems, word answers. The third angle is 125 degrees. Okay, turn the page, last one. Now this one came directly from my math lab. This is your example 6, and this is actually even problem 6 on your homework. I wanted to put an exact example in here because this one always seems to stump people when we get to it. They're almost making it harder than it needs to be, and you'll find out my math lab tends to do that. So it says, based on the census, State A has 19 fewer electoral votes for president than State B. If the total number of votes for these two states is 83, find the number for each state. So it goes through those steps that we went through at the very beginning. The first thing is to what? To understand the problem. And it says reread it as many times as needed. So it's telling you, let X represent the number of votes for state B. Why are they running X to represent the number of votes for state B? Notice here in this sentence, State A has 19 fewer votes for president than State B. B is what I have no information about. So that is their starting point. They're letting X represent State B. So it goes on to say, then blank represents the number of electoral votes for State A. Well, if A has 19 fewer, we're going to represent that by X minus 19. So, step 2, translate into an equation. So it says votes for State B. Well, State B says right here is X. State A, that's what we had to write in the blank, is X minus 19. And then they went ahead and already put the equals 83 for the total. So step 3, solve the equation. So they did State B plus A equals the total. So they just wrote it out. They combined it. They did X plus X to get here to this 2X. So if you weren't even looking at the rest of this down here, you had 2X minus 19 equals 83. What would you do to get X by itself? Well, the first thing you would do is add and over 19. And so that's what they did. They just didn't do it directly under. Okay, they're doing it side by side versus under like we do it. Regardless, 83 plus 19 is going to give me 102. So now they have 2x equals 102, and so they're dividing both sides by that 2. And so just divide. 102 divided by 2 is going to give me 51. Okay, so they're solving part of this for you. You've got to kind of figure out where they're leaving off, and I think that's what trips up a lot of people. So then, step 4, interpret your results. Since X represents the number of votes in State B, use the fact that A has 19 fewer, and so they're doing 51 minus 19 to get that number of votes. And so we're going to get 32. Now it says check your answer. That's part of the steps. You don't really have to. You can just put yes because my math lab's going to tell you if you're right or wrong. So then State A has how many votes and State B has how many votes. So kind of go back up here and look. State A is your X minus 19. So that's what we did right here. So that's 32. And then State B is just your X. Well, we found X to be 51 in our problem. So that goes 51 here. And so you're going to have a problem like this where it literally walks you through those steps. All right, that is it for lesson 2 out of module 1.